In the world of physical products, your warehouse isn't just your storage space, it's the heart of your operation. Staying up to date with the reality of what's going on the ground is essential for you to make informed decisions. Whether you want to track returns or complaints, stock levels or delivery times, a dashboard can allow you to manage and visualize key performance indicators in real time. A dashboard provides a streamlined, repeatable process that takes the manual grind out of reporting. Hi, I'm Kevin from Budibase, and today we're unlocking the power of Budibase to create just such a dashboard. It will connect to data sources wherever they are and allow you to build a dashboard like this in minutes with Budibase, as opposed to hours without. We'll harness custom queries to mold our data into actionable insights. We'll visualize what's happened in the recent past, what's going on now, and what might happen in the near future. At the end of this video, you'll have a robust resource that you can use to make decisions inside of your organization, relying on data that's live now, as opposed to when the report was printed. Let's dive in. If you haven't already, go ahead and make a new account on Budibase Cloud, or self-host your own instance of Budibase. Once you've logged in, you'll land on this portal where you're able to manage applications you have already or create new ones like we're going to do now. You can build your app using any of the templates that already exist within Budibase. You can import an app from somewhere else, or you can start from scratch, which is what we're going to do now. This is going to be our warehouse dashboard, and we'll create that application. Once we've created our app, the first thing we'll have to do is connect our data source. Whether your data is found through a collection of REST API endpoints, a relational or non-relational database, or even a spreadsheet product like Airtable or Google Sheets, you can connect that data to Budibase. My data is in Postgres, so I'll click that and I'll enter my connection details. I'll enable SSL and I'll connect. When I do that, I'll be presented with all the tables that exist in my database. I can include them all or a subset. I want a subset. I want my complaints, my inventory, my sales and returns. I'll click Fetch Tables. On the left-hand side then, we have each of the tables that exist inside of our database as they are now, with the data that's there. And we've got full CRUD functionality in the spreadsheet-like interface that's writing SQL statements in the back end. So even just by importing our data here, we get more flexibility to allow non-technical users, to allow non-database proficient users to be able to use this data in a more readable and usable way. We're going to make a few changes to our data, specifically this category column inside the complaints and the reason column inside of our returns. They're both currently text fields, but I actually only want these particular reasons to be possible. So I'll hit these three dots, edit column, and change this to options. And then I'll add an option for each of the things. So I had defective product, customer changed mind, not as described. And you can click on these circles to set colors for these options or leave Budibase to select their own. I'm going to leave Budibase alone and I'll say I missed one of the reasons, other. So I'll go back in, edit column, and add a fourth option, other. Now when I come to change this, I've got my drop down rather than having to type that magic string, which I might mistype, which will make it harder for me to filter and group and count particular reasons. Equally for complaints, we've got categories, other, customer service, billing, and product. So let's change it to an options. So edit column, options. By default, it's going to pull in the last option set in case you want to use those options again, which can be really helpful if you want to repeat something. But for us, we don't. So we'll just start again and we'll say billing, customer service, delivery, product, and other. We'll save that and make sure we didn't miss any of them. So they all to color. Here we go. That looks pretty good. And again, we have the drop down to select the options. In our inventory table, there are two numerical columns, quantity and unit price. And we can multiply these two together to work out the total value of that particular stock type. So to do that, I'll add another column. I'll call it stock value. And the type I'm going to set is formula. That is a lightning bolt. And because I want to do a calculation, I'm going to use JavaScript. So I'm going to return the quantity, which is already a number we can see, which is great. So we don't have to cast it or do anything like that. Multiplied by the unit price, which again is also a number. So confirm that and save. We'll get a new column. And sometimes I'll have to refresh this page to recalculate that field for the first time. And there we go, the stock value of each of those categories. So that's our data sorted out on the back end. Let's start building the front end. I'll click on design and blank screen. And the route I'm going to give is just the blank route. I only have a single page for this dashboard. I'll click continue. And then I'm able to select the role-based access control. It defaults to basic, which means we're expecting someone to be logged in to be able to use this dashboard. Public would mean they wouldn't have to be logged in. So you might have a public facing dashboard that you would allow your customers and all your users to see. And here we have something which is more mission critical that we want to make sure people are logged in. There's also power and admin, which are elevated roles that you can use to segregate your application. I'll click done and it's going to load up this screen. So I can start adding components to this in order to build up my application. So the first I want to add are some cards, which are going to display my key performance indicators for this month. I'll add a headline first. And this headline is going to say warehouse KPIs. And if this gets printed, I want the date. So this month, it will be date now, month, slash year. I'll save that. I'll have this month and this year. I'm going to add a container. And inside this container, I'm going to add a card block. Now, a card block takes a data source and maps over it, creating a card for each row. By default, it shows 8. We can paginate those if we want more or increase the limit. Now, I want to show the number of new complaints this month. And to do that, I'm going to need to generate a custom query. So I'll go back to data. I'll click on PostgreSQL, queries, create new query. And this is going to be my complaints by month. So I'm going to select, I'm going to get to extract the year from c.date, cast as an integer, and call that year. I'm going to extract the month from c.date, cast that as an integer, and call that month. And then I want to count, and I can make any field to count. I'm going to do the ID as complaint count. What table do I want to do that from? The complaints table. But I'm going to refer to it as C. What do I want to group it by? Well, I want to group it first of all by year and then by month. And equally, I'm going to order it by year and then month. I'll click Run Query and I'll get the first one back. You see the year, the month, and the complaint count. The schema shows that they're numbers. Complaint count has come back as text. So I can either override that here and change this number, or could cast that as an integer as well if I wanted to have it in the right format. And preview allows me to see all of the data that be returned with that query. You see there's 3 rows. I've got data from October 23, November 23, and November 24. I'm going to save this and I'll go back to my design tab. For my cards block, let's rename this. I'll call this my complaints by month cards. I'll change the data to be my complaints by month, this query down here. Now there are 3 cards because there are 3 results, but only one of them was the month 11 of year 2023. So I'll filter and I'll add a filter and I'll say that the year should equal a binding of date now, year. So that's the date right now in the format of year. And the month should be equal to double curly braces, date now, month, in quotes. So I save this. There's only one card because there's only one of those that match that criteria. I'll update the title to be the number of complaints. And the complaint count, the subtitle, I'll say new complaints, and I'll get rid of the description. Okay, so that's how many new complaints we've had this month. The next thing I want to know is how many new returns have we had this month. So I'll duplicate this card and I'll need a new query, this time returns by month. So go back to data, queries, create new query, returns by month. Now, all of these queries will be in the attached blog post, so you can find a link down below and copy them in rather than having to type them in. But I'll type them so you can see. So select, extract year from r.request date as an integer and call it year. Extract month from r.request date and cast that as an integer and call that month. And then count again. Count any field, like the RD field, as returns count. The rest of it's going to be very similar. This time it's from the returns table, which we're going to call R, and then we'll group by year month, and we'll order by year month. We'll run that query. We get the first one back again. Again, if we want to, we could cast count as an integer. We've got our schema, which is confirming they're all numbers, and we've got a preview. Again, we've got 3 bits of data, October 23 and November 23 and November 24. So let's save that and go back to our front end. Let's rename complaints by month to returns by month. Let's change the data source to be returns by month. The filter stayed the same, so there's still only one card here, which is great. The title this time is going to be return count, and the subtitle is going to be new returns. Awesome. Now, if I select the container, I can change its direction from being vertical to horizontal, which will put these side by side. And I've got one more to do. So I'm going to duplicate this. And what I want to check now is the average return time. So I'm going to, again, need a custom query for that. So data, Postgres, queries, create new query. I'll call this return lead time. So it'll start off looking the same. So we'll extract request date, that's year, month from request date, this month. And then I want the average time in days. So to do that, I'll do average date part of day, complete date minus the request date. And I'll see that as average time in days. This is going to be from our returns table. It's going to be grouped by year a month and ordered by year a month again. Let's run that query. Now this average, I'd like this to be rounded probably to 1 decimal place. So I can do that. I can say round, wrap the average in round, and we'll say round to 1 decimal place. Let's try that. So we'll need to make this a float. So we'll let us round it. Let's try again. Let's save that. Go back to our tab. Change the data source this time to be our returns lead time. Change the title to be our average time in days. So this month, 7.0 days. So we just update our titles. So we'll call this return time card. And our title will be average return time. So as soon as we get to this page, the first thing we're presented with are these key performance metrics for this month. And as data is added to our database, this will stay up to date. So live data to make better decisions. Awesome. You can build your Budibase applications with a large selection of components. But as well as these built-in components, you can also add community plugins which add components to this library. I'm going to do that now. I'm going to go back to my portal and go to plugins. I'm going to click on GitHub repo. And the plugin I want to use is called Super Tabs. So let's see if we can find it. Super Tabs here. Render a tab for every child component. So let's go over here. Let's copy this URL and go back to Budibase. Add plugin and paste in a URL. That's going to successfully install the component. So we go back to our application. And Super Tabs is now available to us as a component. Super Tabs will render tabs control with a tab for each of its child components. We use the name property of the component as tab text. Add a couple of containers to get started. So I'm going to create a container called returns, another container on the top level here called complaints, and a third container called inventory. So that's going to mean our users can click between these tabs and see the relevant data without changing pages, and it reduces the visual complexity of this page, meaning you can just look at the details that you actually care about. So if I start with inventory, that's probably the easiest and the quickest. So with the inventory, all I'm going to do in here is add a table block. So in inventory, I'll click add a table block. Specifically, this is going to look at the inventory table. And it's going to allow us to be able to paginate between our different inventory types and be able to see what's going on. Now I might want to only show this data in a different order. So if I click on all columns, I can now move these around. So I probably want the item name. I'm not really fussed about the vendor, but quantity, unit price, and stock value. For stock value, I quite like it to say £sign before that. So I can go in here to value and put the $sign and then the value like that. And I might want to change these labels. They currently match the database, but I quite like them not to have those underscores. And this is just changing the label on the front end, how they look, rather than any connect in the back. So now when someone gets to this dashboard, they can see straight away how our inventory is doing, and they can sort this table on the various columns that are here. That was the first one. That was easy. 2 more to do. So let's look at returns next. For our returns, we'll have a pie chart showing the reasons for our returns. We'll have a table showing the details of our most recent returns. We'll have a line graph showing the number of returns we requested each day. So 3 bits of information we want to show. So we'll start off, we've got our returns container, and inside of this, I'm going to add another container that's going to hold our 2 graphs. So I can have these going side by side. I'll do horizontally here because I want this to be my horizontal container. And first of all, we're going to add our pie chart. So our pie chart wants to group our returns by reason. So I need a query for that. So in data, I'll go to Postgres, queries, create new query. I'll call this returns by reason. And I'll write the query. So I want to select the reason. And I want to count any field. I'll just do star as the return count. I want to do that from the returns table. And I want to group by the reason. So we run that query. We get the first result back again. Customer changed mind. There's 4 of those. Quite like that to be a number. So we can go to our schema and change that to be a number. And our preview, we can see all the reasons here. So customer changed mind 4, defective product 6. Brilliant. Let's save that. Go back to our design tab. And inside of our container, we'll add a chart block. This is going to be our reason pie chart. And we want this to be a pie chart. We want it to be from our returns by reason. Our label will be reason. Our data will be our return count. So I'm going to give it a width of 50%. We have both the hover tooltip and we've got the legend here we can see as well. If you want to, you can also set your own custom palette, either by selecting one for each category. Maybe we want pink and yellow and I don't know. We can add the labels. We can get rid of the legend. We've got lots of ways we can configure this to make it the way you want it to be. There are the preset palettes as well. I'm going to use maybe this one. So beside this, I want a table that displays detailed information of recent returns. So I'm going to get another query. This time I want the returns with item name. So I'll do a new query, call it returns with item name. I want to select everything from the returns table and the name from the sales table. So I'll say that's from returns, which I'm calling R. I want to left join. So that means we'll just take the returns table and extend it. If there's a record that matches on the sales table that isn't on the returns table, we'll ignore it. So we'll call the sales table S, and we want to join on r.saleID, which is going to match our s.id. So let's run that, check we get what we want. Brill, we get all of the details and then the item name, which is super. So now let's save that. Go back to our design tab, and then we're going to create a table. So we'll click on add and add a table block. The data we want to point this towards is our returns with item name. And then we want to tidy up these columns a little bit. So I'll click on all columns and click add all columns. I'll remove the IDs, they're not particularly useful. I'll bring the item name to the top and remove that underscore. I'm interested in when the return was requested and maybe when it was completed and what the reason was. That seems fine. I'll save that. And I'd like this table to take up the full 50%. So I'll go to Styles, Edit Custom CSS, and add Width 50% and save. Awesome. So the last thing in this tab is we want a line graph that's showing us the number of returns per day. We're going to need another query for that. So we'll go to Postgres, Queries, create new query, and we'll call this returns by date. So as always, these queries are in the attached blog post. And this one's a bit more complex because what we need to do to make our line graph is we need a row for each day. So if there are no returns on a day, we still want something there. So we'll get a series of dates for every day this month, and then we'll count how many have happened this month, and then we'll be able to group them. So I run that query. We can see that for every day of every month, we can see what's going on, and then we'll be able to filter it. So some days there's 0 returns, and then some days there's 1 return, and some days there are more. So we'll save that, go back to our design tab, and we will, below our horizontal container, we will add a chart block. This is going to be our returns by date graph. It'll be a line graph. We use our returns by date. Sorry, our label is going to be the date, and our data is going to be the count. And so now we have this chart here. So it's got every date from 2023 all the way through. So we can see the returns over time. So far, we have our cards at the top. We've got our returns tab and our inventory tab, just a complaints tab left to go. And the complaints is going to look very similar to our returns. So what we could do is we could just duplicate this tab. We'll call it complaints and delete the other one. And then we'll just need to update our data. So our pie chart is going to be complaints by category. So we'll create a new query, complaints by category, and our query for that. We'll run that and we'll see, yep, for each category, these are the complaints that are there. So we go back to our pie chart and switch out the data. So in complaints, we want the data now to be complaints by category, our label to be category, and our data to be the complaint count. Equally for our table, we want to use our complaints with item name. So we'll go to Postgres, Queries, Add Query, Complaints with item name, and we will run that. Looks good. We'll save it, and we'll switch it over on the front end. So our form now should be complaints with item name. Our data provider should be complaints with item name. Our table then, that's looking good. We could tidy up these columns. We could say, have them all, and then have the item name and maybe the complaint and its category. And then our form. So data provider, update this to be complaints with item name, and our form to be complaints with item name. Okay. Last but not least, we'll have a complaints by date. So we'll update this line graph as well. So we'll have a Postgres query, add new query. This is going to be complaints by date. And it's going to look very similar to our last one. So complaint by date. We'll have our date series to make a category for every month, every day of the month. We'll count how many are on a particular day and bring them together. And then we'll make sure we got the right dates and order them and group them in the right way. One complaint on the 3rd of October. We've got other complaints all the way down. So we can save that. Back to our front end, switch over the query again. So instead of returns by date, we'll switch that over to be complaints by date. We'll change the label to be date and the data to be the complaint count. Our line chart is there. So there we have it. We have a dashboard that we can check every day that's going to update as our database gets updated. So it's telling us now the details for the 11th month, so November 2023, our new complaints, new returns, our average return time. We've got details about our returns, details about our complaints, and details about our inventory. As a finishing touch, we might want to go to our screen and theme and maybe set to a nice dark theme so we can see what's going on. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. and it's given me some ideas for the types of things you might want to track on your custom dashboard and how to do that in Budibase with the data you already have. Comment below and let us know what we should be building next. See you soon. Thanks. Bye.